Welcome to Dreams and Ladders, the podcast for women in male-dominated fields who want to lead with confidence, make an impact, and thrive in meaningful, challenging work. If you're ready to rise without burning out, excel as the leader you know you're meant to be, and stop feeling like you have to do it all alone, you're in the right place. It's your time to lead, thrive, and rise. Let me start with telling you a little story. My sister was the first one in the family to have children. I'm the oldest of three, but my sister was the first one to have children. And I remember going to see her at the hospital, meeting my nephew, all the excitement in the family. It was the first grandchildren. Everybody's happy. And then, I guess it was about a week later, my sister makes a post on Facebook that says, "Well, crap, the hospital forgot to give me the instruction manual." And of course, I'm kind of laughing, and then part of me is like, wait a minute, they give you instruction manuals? And so of course my sister's like, no, silly, you have to figure it all out yourself. That's the whole point of the post. And I'm like, okay, obviously I didn't have children, kind of missed the point of of what she was trying to say. But the point of what I'm trying to talk about here is that she was frustrated because she was trying to do something that was really important, had high consequences, and felt like she had no manual to help guide her along the way, that the hospital had forgotten to give her the instruction manual. And often in my career, I have felt the same way. I felt like there was a hidden instruction manual on how to advance your career, especially as a woman in a male-dominated profession, but that somehow they don't hand the manual out to the women, only the guys get it. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what happens, but that's how it felt at the time. And I spent a lot of time early in my career wishing someone would give me that darn instruction manual so that I could navigate and figure out how to advance my career, how to make the right choices. What do I need to be focusing on? What's my next steps? How do I handle this situation when things come up? I wished I had a mentor. The mentor was the instruction manual that I was looking for. Unfortunately, where I was working, there was very few mentors and even fewer for women. It wasn't something that was common practice in the organization. There was once, I think, an attempt to create a mentorship program for women. Of course, it was announced in the middle of the summer when no one was around. I missed the call. Anyway, let's just say that I navigated the vast majority of my career without a mentor. Now, I did have individuals help me along the way with different components, but those were kind of few and far between, and they were isolated incidents. I didn't have somebody that I could go to, develop a relationship with, learn from, ask questions. What would you do? What do you think is my next step? There was all these questions I had, but I had nobody to ask them. Lots of studies have been done that show that mentorship has great benefits, and it's a key factor in women advancing in leadership in organizations. Unfortunately, the same studies also show that women have a harder time finding a mentor, and that often senior men aren't comfortable or don't want to mentor women. And the senior women in the organization, the ones who have cracked the code and got there, aren't always willing to mentor the women either. And so it's kind of like that old adage when you were a teenager trying to get your first job. How do you get a job when you don't have experience? How do you get experience when you don't have a job? It's kind of the same cycle going on in organizations for women who want to rise in leadership. How do you find a mentor if there's very few women in senior leadership that are willing to mentor and few men in senior leadership that are willing to mentor women? But then if you can't get the mentorship to help you advance, then how do we get more women into senior leadership positions to create a bigger pool of women that could mentor up and coming, emerging high performers, emerging leaders? It's this self-perpetuating cycle. So how do we crack the code? Well, I happen to have given this a lot of thought because I spent 30 plus years without a mentor trying to navigate two different male-dominated professions, and took some time, put some thoughts on paper, and I am sharing today what I have learned from my own experiences and from what I've learned from coaching other women. So the first thing, mentors are beneficial. Like I said, there are studies that say that having a mentor is essential to advancement in leadership. I don't think anybody's going to say that it's not. And it is a challenge for women to find that mentor. So we know that they provide the guidance. We know that they're beneficial, but we know that they're not always available. So now what? What do you do if you are looking to advance, if you're looking for that guidance and you can't find it inside your organization? What the heck are your options? Well, the first option, I'm going to bear with me here. I'm going to take a little page from the Great British Bake Off. And if you've ever watched the show, you know that there's a challenge in there where they give you a recipe, but they leave key ingredients out. And so it's the job of the contestants to figure out how to make that particular recipe with incomplete information. Pretty much how I felt navigating my career. But what I often did was I listened. And not like you're snooping, eavesdropping, interrupting conversations, but just listen to what's being said around you. Often there's clues being dropped, the little pieces that you need to make the whole recipe, but you have to listen for them. Sometimes it might just be that someone's having a conversation. They say, "Oh, I met with so-and-so today, and this is what they told me." There might be nuggets in there. Spend some time paying attention to what's going on around you. Sometimes those answers drop. Okay, that's not going to answer all of your questions. I'm just throwing that one out there as a very simple, easy way to pick up tips within your organization of what's accepted, what skills you should be developing, next steps. You'll hear it in other people's conversations. Typically, it's going to be the guys talking, but you're going to hear it in other conversations if you're listening for it. The great thing is, once you decide that you want to listen for something, your brain is wonderful. It takes over and it says, this is important to her. I am going to pay attention when these kinds of conversations are happening. And I'm going to be like, hey, you, pay attention. Something good's going on over here. Just to see if there's any nuggets for you. Okay. Next option. You can find mentors outside your organization. Although they may not be able to give you the same advice, they might not be able to say, in this organization, this is what they did to advance their career. They might not be able to give you that exact tailored advice, but what they can do is give you very similar advice. They can talk about their experiences in their organizations, what they have done, their struggles, what they would recommend. There's a lot of complementary professions to whichever one you are in. And there are people out there that can help you. Now, how do you find those people? Well, LinkedIn's a great way to make connections. Volunteer work is another great way. I met a lot more women through my work on volunteer boards. They were in senior positions on the board. I had an opportunity to observe and learn from them. Those were opportunities for mentorship. Now, I've talked about this before. I don't love networking. I really had a hard time advocating for myself. And so while I recognized that there were opportunities there to find mentors within my volunteer work, I did not capitalize on those opportunities. Reflecting back, there were things that I would do differently, which is why I'm here sharing that with you today, that this is one of my lessons learned, that I did have options in front of me, I just didn't see them. Another option is staying connected with people who've left your organization. Maybe they didn't want to mentor while they were in the organization, or maybe you didn't feel comfortable talking with them while they were in the organization. But there may be people who have recently left or retired who might be looking to do mentorship. So just keep that one in mind, especially if you work in a role such as policing. Recently retired women out of the service suddenly have free time, something that they weren't used to, and maybe looking to stay connected with people inside the organization and wanting to make it a better place for the next people that are up and coming, and may be very willing to mentor. So that's mentoring. Now, what are our other options? And what I discovered in my last couple of years of my career in policing, as I was making my transitions and getting ready for my third career as a coach, I discovered that it actually wasn't entirely a mentor I was looking for. I went to Royal Roads University to get certified as an executive coach, and part of the program, we spend a lot of time coaching each other. It's obviously the easiest way to get started. You work with your fellow students and practice on each other. And what I found, because I was still in the workplace, that all of a sudden I had options to explore challenging circumstances that I was dealing with somebody who was outside the organization, who didn't even know anybody I worked with. It was a confidential conversation, subject to certain limitations, which any coach will tell you what the limitations are of confidence when they're working with you. But it was a safe space to explore different issues that were coming up. And I found that by having that safe space to have these conversations, I could see shifts in how I approached things. I could see shifts in how I felt about certain circumstances. I felt like I had more control. I felt like I had better approaches to certain things. I am not saying I was perfect. I was not. But what I noticed was that I had additional tools to work with, and I had a place to explore different obstacles and issues as they came up. I got to thinking, wow, I spent so much of my career wishing I had a mentor that I didn't look at what the other options were in absence of a mentor. And it turns out that coaching was exactly what I needed for a lot of the things that I was for assistance with. Let's face it, being a woman in a male-dominated environment, there are additional challenges. We deal with gender bias. We deal with sexual harassment. We deal with unconscious bias in the workplace, which disadvantages women in their attempts to advance in their careers. We deal with people who are outright ignorant, and we deal with the ones that will subtly try to take you down with their thousand little micro comments. We deal with that on top of all of the other issues that leaders face every day in the workplace. Having a coach where I could explore that without triggering HR investigations, without having any chance that what I wanted to explore would be leaked to the wrong people, I had a safe space for growth, for exploration. I felt that I was heard. My coaches gave me back empathy, something that I did not get in my workplace. It was like all of a sudden someone opened the doors and said, hey, this is the solution you've been looking for. Now, I'm not going to say that coaching solves all the problems, but it can help with a lot of them. And mentoring and coaching together can be a great combination. I've worked with a few people that have mentors, and I often ask the people that I'm coaching whether or not they have a mentor because I want to make sure that we aren't overlapping, but I also want to make sure that we are capitalizing on each other's development plans. I may have someone I'm coaching whose mentor is giving them guidance on what should be their next career steps. And then they're in front of me for a coaching conversation, and they're telling me that they're feeling resistance to taking these steps, that they're not sure if they're ready, they're not sure if they can lead at that level. All sorts of things come up. They don't want to raise that with their mentor. They don't want to say, well, I feel like an imposter. I don't feel like I'm ready. I'm not sure I'm good enough. That's not the conversations they want to have with their mentor. So the mentor has given them guidance and they accept it as being good guidance for themselves, but now they're dealing with that internal resistance to implementing the guidance they've been given. And that's a great place for a coaching conversation. And so you can see how mentoring and coaching can work very well together. But if you don't have a mentor, and chances are you may not, coaching can fill a lot of the gaps on its own. One of the things that coaches look for is blind spots. And where this is great is that you don't know they're blind spots. They're called blind spots for a reason. You may be doing something repeatedly that might be hurting your career, and it might not be being called out by your immediate supervisor, by your mentor, or on your performance evaluations. Sometimes it's just your way of being or communicating or thinking, and no one is challenging it or holding up the mirror and saying, this is what I'm seeing. Is this how you intend to be? Delicate conversation when you're coaching someone through blind spots, absolutely. But it can be a great benefit to have that third party who has no vested interest in what happens inside the organization. They're there for you. They're looking after you. And they don't have to have that awkward conversation the next day after maybe some feedback that you didn't really like. It's not the same when you're working with a coach. It's different, the conversations that coaches can have from what next level supervisors have. Sometimes we can get deeper into issues. And let's face it, a lot of people struggle with providing constructive feedback. You've probably noticed for yourself that it's much easier to compliment people when they're doing a good job, and it is hard to find ways to give constructive feedback when performance isn't where you want it to be. Now, extrapolate that. There's a good chance that you are not getting all of the feedback you need because someone above you is uncomfortable delivering that feedback. That's where, in a safe space, coaches can explore blind spots, call it out, talk things through. Does this resonate? I'm seeing this in how you show up here. Is this similar to how you're showing up in the workplace? And if this isn't how they want to show up in the workplace, then we can have a conversation about how they would like to show up now that they are aware of whatever has been brought to their attention. Coaching is also great for developing your career development plans. I often work with people, especially at the beginning of the year. I seem to get more calls where people have to set their goals for the year and they're trying to make sure they're meaningful and trying to phrase them in a way that actually benefits them and the company. But then we also look at, like, where are your skill gaps? Talked about this on a previous episode about developing technical skills versus developing leadership skills and emotional intelligence and communication. Coaches are great for working with you on making sure that you are developing a well-rounded set of skills in accordance with the goals that you have. Oftentimes, too, coaches are trained in different assessment tools that can help guide your development. Talked before in the last episode about the EQI 2.0 and about the core strength development inventory. Both fantastic tools in helping you see where you're at, how you use emotions, how you communicate with people, and it provides a basis for a conversation to help guide the development on the areas that you choose to focus on in your leadership journey. And then coaches can help you develop that accountability plan once you've identified those new goals and the new skills you're going to work on. They work with you on the accountability plan. Then one other area where coaches can be really beneficial is when you've been passed over, because that can be tough to bounce back from. And it can be really hard to bounce back and keep that positive face and move forward in a way that is not detrimental to your future career, while at the same time acknowledging you're probably very disappointed if you've been passed over. I've had this happen before in my career where I've been passed over, and it was not an easy time in my life. The first time I remember it happening, I didn't have a coach. I just had to deal with all of my emotions at home. And I don't think I really created a great plan to move forward from it. And it certainly took me longer to process everything and to come up with what are my next steps. Later on, because you're not always going to get what you want the first time around. Sometimes there are things you need to work on, and sometimes there's just other circumstances that are beyond your control. But later on, I had an issue of being passed over, but I had a coach then. And I was able to work through it and put it in perspective. And yes, it still stings, but I had a different mindset and a different tool set to get through that time. And I know many other people that have used coaches in similar circumstances because it allows them to take things in, assess where they're at, look at what they need to develop, objectively look at, is the organization still a good fit for them, and then make choices based on a bit more of a logic and reasoned approach than perhaps the emotions that would have been running high if you just internalized everything and didn't have a way to process it. Now, it might sound like I have been talking up coaching as the be-all and end-all for things here. And the question at the beginning of this episode was, which is better, coaching or mentoring? The answer to that question is both. They're both great tools. The reason I have focused a bit more on mentoring in this episode is because although they are very beneficial, and they are often a key factor in women advancing in leadership, women don't always have access to them. If you have access to a mentor, or if there are mentors available in your organization, you haven't taken advantage of them and need some help taking those steps, then that's where coaching can come in. Coaching can fill the gap. Coaching can help with your development plans. Coaching can help you take the advice you're getting from a mentor and help you move forward with it. Coaching's a great way to develop those leadership skills, navigate those workplace obstacles, build resilience, all things we talked about in the last episode that differentiate you from being a high performer to a high potential. If you'd like to explore coaching and meet to see if we would be a good fit to work together, check out the link in the show notes, or you can come visit my website at www.dreamsandladders.com. That's all for today, but tune into the next episode where I'm going to talk about the single biggest discovery that had the most impact on my career. And it could have a huge impact for you too. Until next time, take care of yourself, be you, and do great things. Thanks for listening.